I'm Newth Morris, and this is the Matt Balaker podcast.
Hello, good people, and welcome to a first. This is an in-person episode of the Matt Balaker podcast. We have Newth Morris, a returning guest. He's the pride of Maryland, a mountaineer, a soccer dad, and a neighbor. So welcome back to the program, Newth.
Thanks, Matt. Good to talk to you.
Well, I'm excited because this is a little different. Obviously, we have a lot of parents on the show. We have a lot of parents who listen to the show. But there's some happenings with our local school board, and I'm ignorant to it. So Newth's going to kind of help me catch up to what's happening, and then we'll react accordingly. So for people out there who are about as unfamiliar as me, I know there's no superintendent of the Laguna Beach School Board, but let me shut up and kind of give a quick catch up of where we're at.
Yeah, so there's like a bunch of stuff going on. So we're going to go down a bunch of different alleys. Feel free to pull on stuff or keep you on track. So as Matt, as you said, like I'm not only a soccer dad, I'm a water polo dad here in Laguna Beach, and that matters for a reason I'll get to in a second. But, going into November of last year and the election and stuff like that.
Wait, there was an election?
Yeah, you might have noticed there was a lot going on. The switcheroo and an assassination attempt and, a locally hotly contested congressional race and what have you. So partly due to that, I didn't really pay attention to what's going on in the school board.
Good for you.
Yeah, in the night before, I think I'm going to do a cast my vote. We take the kids in person. So for civics reasons, but I asked my wife who I should vote for, and I showed up and realized that didn't really think about anything at all like that. So fast forward to a board meeting that has first school board meeting with the new board. I got asked to speak as part of being a water polo family.
Okay.
We have a pool project that's kind of been pending for apparently decades. I didn't quite understand that.
That's all? Okay.
Yeah, so for a while, Laguna Beach speed on this. And the pool was approved, but the board announced they were going to revisit it. And so as I had done a couple times before, I went to this board meeting to speak about the benefits of the pool, et cetera.
And it was an in-person board meeting or on Zoom?
Yeah, in person.
Okay.
Yeah. So the last few that I've been to have been like that. And again, I've not been super involved in this. I've spoken a couple of times on various topics, but expecting to show up, say my piece, and get out. So I was a little bit late getting there because my kids are a cotillion.
Okay.
And so show up and walk up, and then there's 50, 70 people standing outside this room.
And what's normal?
So normally you walk in and there's business as usual, particularly if you're going to go in and talk about one topic. You're like, you can show up late, what have you. And you're like, all right, my topic's fifth on the agenda. So I'll go speak and get out. So it wasn't that big of a deal that I was 15 or 20 minutes late. So walked in, there's all these families standing outside, like what's happening? They're like, we don't know. We got in there and they immediately said, we're going to closed session. They all ran out. And so we're all standing there, all of these parents going, what's going on?
Uh-huh.
So eventually the board comes back into session and they sit down and immediately all start sniping with each other. And so there's this kind of thing like, you have clearly violated the Brown Act, et cetera, well, we can talk about.
I don't know what the Brown Act is, but I don't want to violate it.
Yeah, well, let's come back to that because it's something I've learned a lot in the last 2 weeks about. But once things actually settle down, it comes clear that there's essentially, they elect a new president of the board, and essentially you can tell that there's factions that are going on, and that there's a new faction that's come into play that now has control and has decided they're going to exercise it.
The new regime.
So they say that they've got and at this point, this is my impression at the time, they've got the new superintendent lined up and they want to negotiate the contract and they push that through in the closed session. And now they're going to push it through 3-2 at the open session. You're like, whoa, this is weird.
Yeah.
And then there's a bunch more sniping again. In the course of this, one of the members says that called the students in our school district a special interest group. Then went on to say that her job was not to represent the students as much as the entire community, including the whatever percent that doesn't have kids there going. So
this is a board member?
Board member.
Okay.
Yeah. And then in the course of this, it's clear by some of the existing, Joan is one of the existing board members, that this is improper. And Brown Act comes up and up and up. They elect Dee Perry as the new president of the board, and she was well-meaning soft, but once you're in a contentious meeting, like Robert's Rules of Order and whatever else, completely incapable of keeping the meeting in order. So, anyways, this goes back and forth. There's a lot of different elements there. The new guy apparently is a lawyer of some kind, and so he is texting or calling his own lawyer on the phone, not the school board lawyer, his lawyer. He's a lawyer calling a lawyer, citing like section this and point 4.2 or whatever. Essentially,
when they start saying point something, it's not good.
No, that's just like somebody saying I'm a lawyer, don't question me, right? Yeah. So particularly like I don't even think he got his lawyer on the phone. He's posturing that I did all this stuff. So anyways, in this meeting that I thought was going to be there for me speaking about 15 minutes about a pool, I walk out of that meeting 2 to 3 hours later going like, we got an issue here. This is not a pool thing. This is a school thing. So I went home and I was up all night, kind of just like, something just didn't sit well with me. And then kind of the next morning when in the office, I got a text from a buddy of mine, another father, kind of, who's like, hey man, I think we need to do something, and then I got in the office, I got a phone call, hey man, I think we need to do something. I'm like, okay, a couple text messages. So this is like 8:30 in the morning. I'm going into work. And I said, all right, well, let's set up a WhatsApp group, had 5 or 10 names on it, and wrote down some thoughts about what we need to do. Came out of a meeting and there's like 50 plus people in this WhatsApp group. And so like, oh, wow. And so over the next 12, 14 hours, that number grows to over 200.
Wow. And so I want to add some context. So if you have a WhatsApp group with over 200 people, this is a school system that has like 2,500 kids.
Yeah, that's
that's like a pretty significant percentage for a small area, but please continue.
Yeah, and out of nowhere, without any kind of broadcast, that was just how many people were upset by what happened in that meeting. So anyways, the next thing, I think it's probably worth giving a little context. Like my day job is venture capital. And a big part of what we do is you get a company that comes across your plate. And certainly you look at product market, but a big part of what we do is like figuring out what's the story behind the company. Like, who are these people? How do we get here and whatever else? And then as part of that, the trajectory of where it's likely to go. So in hindsight, I thought it was a pretty good toolkit. So I started calling all these people that have been involved to get a sense for the lay of the land. And it's like I said, it's definitely a bigger issue than the pool. So anyway, so here's what I've gathered right now about where we are, just in terms of like proximate causes. So there's normally in any high functioning organization, there's always going to be 20-25% of the people that are unhappy, right? For reasons past or the to-do list of what needs to be done. So there's always going to be that constituency of people.
Yeah. I would have estimated it like 97, but we probably know more.
I'm just guessing, just in terms of where this is not even a public office thing. This is like running any organization. So I think you've got that group that's always there, some disgruntled parents or whatever else. And then you've got this pool group, okay? And so the pool group is essentially like 3 or 4 gadflies that show up at the meetings. And they're really like NIMBY type people. Like there's going to be a construction project around my house, right? As an aside, our school district had a model UN debate, and the students chose the pool project. These guys,
what a coincidence!
Yeah, these guys showed up at the model UN debate and heckled our kids. So to give you an idea of where they're coming from, so you got this group.
Okay, but were the kids asking for it?
Were they asking for it in terms of debating the topic, or did they invite them? Yeah, so
these 12-year-olds were asking.
Yeah, exactly. Like, who's going to show up and heckle kids, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's this group. And then there's Laguna, right? And as you all know, there's a knee-jerk impulse in town to stop everything. So like, okay, someone's going to build something, let's show up and stop it.
Yeah.
And at any moment in time, you can rally those folks, particularly with bad information. So I've grown more. I did a design review project, and for your audience,
so it took like 3 weeks.
So years and years and years. If you wanted to design a system to cause more tension with your neighbors, you'd be hard pressed to come up with something more than design review. So having been through that, I've actually grown to understand a little bit more of the nuance around this a little bit more. And as a note, my neighbor here owns the record store in town. I will name her name. She doesn't be brought into this. And she and her husband, who since passed away, were over at my house. She might have been here for a New Year's party, right when we moved in. We do 9 o'clock New Year's, not late, but we invited them over.
We don't party hard here.
No, not with little kids.
Yeah.
But anyway, so she came over and we really got them talking. This is a pretty cool experience. So it might not look like it now, but at one point I had long hair. I saw the Grateful Dead 12 times when Jerry was alive. Yeah. So,
the subtext is thick.
yeah. So I read electrical lead acid test and all these other kinds of things. And these folks came over and they started talking about their experience here in Laguna in the 60s. And like, it was pretty amazing. I mean, like Timothy Leary used to work for him.
No way.
Timothy Leary's son did, but he stole records. They had to fire him. And the Doors used to come in and buy, buy records for him and hang out. I'm like, wow, this is pretty amazing. So, there's this town at this moment in time was part of something. And so, and if you go kind of some of the lore that I kind of know about, but don't really know about, I guess there's going to be a convention center built downtown at one point, and there's going to be a golf course built in the canyon, and people handcuff themselves to bulldozers.
Wow.
I don't know how much is apocryphal or how much happened. But my point on this is that there is a valid of like, we need to keep the spirit of the town development thing. But then there's this element that it becomes like, we're going to stop everything. Right.
It's that push and pull.
And I think it's, in this case, these Sensible Laguna guys tapped into that element, and they just mobilized them and like stretched or told untruths about what the pool project was going to be, got them to show up. So you got these groups, you got Sensible Laguna, the anti-development crowd, the normal group of parents that are kind of disaffected. And then they put forward a couple candidates that are the kinds of people that show up to meetings all the time and have for many years.
All right.
Two of them had run multiple times before and not gotten it. And so they kind of got behind these kind of patsy candidates or what have you. And that's kind of the coalition. And then I think also at the time, you've got the craziness that's going on in the election. So I wasn't paying attention.
Yeah.
Like, I think a lot of us weren't paying attention.
Right.
And if you look at the vote tally, these two candidates came in and won by 200 votes.
And you're talking about the school board election.
School board election, yeah. So school board election. And so then there are three kind of like, call it pro-kid candidates, but they split the field. Okay. So there's 2 seats up and they split it. And so it was a 200 to 300 vote difference.
Yeah, I was big in the anti-kid camp. But please continue.
So you'd be surprised. Yeah. Some people are.
Yeah.
So anyways, that's kind of the proximate cause for what happened.
Okay.
Now the actual, if you look at kind of the fundamental causes, we as a group of parents, we weren't organized. There was no place for the candidates to come speak for us. I never got a voting guide for that, et cetera. So there was an element of like, sounds kind of strange to think that we as parents need to be organized to support our kids in school.
Right. There's not a parents union or a lobbying.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, I guess if we've been called a special interest group, we're going to have to become one.
Yeah.
But yeah, so anyways, this thing is kind of a mess. So now there's some other topics that flow into that. So if we could talk about the pool itself, or what do you think?
Yeah, well, so there's this big meeting. There's a lot of, I'm a lawyer referencing certain, sections of laws that no one really probably knows or cares about.
Yeah.
But then, so this, what I'm getting at is all of a sudden all these parents got involved.
Yep.
You got involved. Why? I mean, what was kind of your main focus at this point?
Yeah. So at this point, I just was kind of got in the middle of a bunch of activity. I was kind of the center point. It all came together. The one thing I have to say is there were a number of people that were very concerned about these candidates becoming school board members.
Okay.
Particularly, people that have been involved in, PTA and school power and previous board members, et cetera. And they were already, even before this came on my radar, they were already very concerned about what could be done here. So I guess over that time, I spent a bunch of time learning as to what some of these other things were, and kind of coming together to really understand like what the potential threats are.
Okay, sorry, but that's a very bad precedent. People should just have opinions without learning about stuff first. But you're the minority in this case. You actually learned about something and then you had an informed opinion. So what did you kind of glean?
Yeah, so I mean, there like in terms of what the Brown Act is. So the Brown Act is a California law of
Jerry Brown. Really?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Who knows? But sorry.
Yeah, but anyways, like if you're a public body, you can't have more than 2 people meeting and talking about school business without notifying the public, taking comments, and then having a forum.
Okay.
And so it was obvious in this meeting that the 3 of them, the 2 new members and the existing member, had gotten together because even the meeting, there was like, we decided, and like, that's clear. That's a Brown Act violation, right? So there's that. they came in the course of the meeting. Not only did they talk about stopping the pool, they talked about revisiting all of the capital expenditures for the district, and that included things around the football field or science. Who knows? Like we're stopping everything. And then revisit. Now the important thing is there was no alternative vision. Like the school's headed down the wrong path because of this, right? It's more like we're just here to like break stuff. And as a data point, we do have the #1 school district in Orange County. So, how far off course can you really be?
Right.
And if you think about why people come here, a big part of the reason why people move here is beaches and restaurants, right? But you've got traffic, you got all kinds of other issues here. A big part of what drives it is the good schools. And if you think about the legacy of the town, there's Pageant the Masters, there's, all the heavy stuff and whatever else, but there's like, we've had blue ribbon schools forever. We've had world-class Olympians come out of here. Like the schools are as much as the fabric of the community as some of the other things that external people point to. So I think it's clear to all of us as parents, like these guys don't have our best interest in mind. And so
I guess to steelman it, what was their take? Like, what was their side of it? Like if they don't have their kids' best interest in mind, whose interest did they have?
So I think there's a bunch of based off some of the stuff I've gotten, because these two new members, and actually, so the existing member, her name's Dee Perry, she's sued the school board a couple times.
Okay.
So there's some like grievance history. And my understanding is the other two also have some petty grievances around them, right?
Okay.
And so that's kind of where I think there is actually just a grievance motive here. And they finally have their time in the sun. And that's what it very much sounded like in that meeting. Again, there was no like proactive vision as to what's going on. It's like, I finally get in charge, I'm going to break stuff.
Yeah.
We're also at this moment in time where we don't have a superintendent. And so,
how does that play into this?
Yeah. So that's interesting. You talked about this offline, but, I'd heard you mention that Jason Valoria, the previous superintendent, made $400-something thousand. I think when I heard about that before the election.
That's where my jealousy comes in. But
go ahead. When I first heard about that in that context, I was like, wow, that sounds high for a public servant. And never really thought about it again.
Right.
Oh, and by the way, like if someone had come in and said like, hey, we're going to cut costs in Laguna, I would have been like, oh yeah, like review the bus contracts.
Well, that was kind of my instinct. It's like costs rarely go down.
Yeah.
So it's like, why not look at them? But please continue. So I don't want to get sidetracked.
Well, so here's the things around that. Again, it sounded high to me, but so you're gathering some more data points. First off, his daughter is in the school district. There's all these pushes and pulls to have, cops and fire and everybody to be part of the community. And so there's two ways you can do that. You can level a bunch of housing and put up low-income housing and drop the cost to live here, or you can pay wages for people to be here. Now, if his daughter was going to Santa Maria, I'd have big issues.
Yeah.
But he's here eating the dog food with the rest of us, which is good. As I mentioned, we are in the #1 school district in Orange County, so there's a performance piece.
Raw.
Yeah. The other thing is the competitive landscape. So he was making less than the superintendent of San Dieguito, which is I think where you're from, right? In Sanitas area.
Yeah. Carlsbad, close enough.
Close enough, somewhere down there in that area, and below or at par with like Sunnyvale, Palo Alto, all the areas that we would benchmark ourselves to. So the other thing that this matters is right now I've come to understand there's 5 superintendent vacancies in North County, San Diego, and Orange County. So you've got a limited supply of product and a lot of demand. And so what does that do to costs, right? Just as a fair market guy.
Right.
So I guess when I came to on that is like, it seems like it is what it is. Now, the other thing, this is kind of an aside. I've thought for a while that we should pay our congressmen more, because that way they'll, they got to maintain lifestyles in DC in their home district. And what they make is not enough to do that. That's why so many of them become clowns, because they're focused on becoming a lobbyist or a YouTube influencer.
Well, I mean, the salary is a small, like you get it on like the kickbacks or the speaking tours or the wink, wink, buy the stock kind of thing.
Yeah, which is unfortunate. Yeah. So I guess where I came to on all of that was like, it sounds reasonable in terms of where the milieu in which we're operating, right? So we're in a California school district, and we're in a good one. So that's kind of where it is. So the other thing on this, so okay, and so if you think about that now, we have to get a new superintendent. We had a good one that pulled out. And so I said he was fired, but really what happened was this new board came in. He saw the writing on the wall. The old board saw the writing on the wall and said, you've been serving us for 10 years, the number one school district, we're going to spare you this pain. And so they eased him out. Now, in the course of that board meeting, these guys came in, the new board, Howard, Sherry, and Dee came in and said, all right, we found the new person. We're going to railroad them through and negotiate package. And everybody's like, Brown Act, Brown Act.
Yeah.
Well, this new school board member, their new potential superintendent candidate is named, her last name is Culverhouse. Apparently, I don't know what was negotiated before, but she saw the video of what a clown show the school board meeting was. So she pulled out.
She's like, not for me.
So initially, I thought in the meeting, I'm like, this person's got to be a clown too. Turns out she was probably pretty good, but she pulled out. So that means this new...
Well, probably evidence she was really good. She saw the SHI show that was happening.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you think about what this new board has done, since these guys have been elected, they burned the bridge with two good candidates for superintendent, plus put it out there that we're kind of a clown show, and in a market where it's super competitive for who we're looking for next. So if the goal was to cut costs, they're nowhere near the path to doing that.
Okay.
So there's that.
And I guess my instinct is, I'm sure there is a reason, but why do you need a superintendent? I mean, there are private schools that you can have an elementary school that's distinct from a middle school. I mean, is it just too big of a deal not to have one? Or, I mean, what do they do?
Yeah, we are at some point, just organization. I don't know. There's other people you should talk to that are more about school district functions and things like that. Again, I've come up to speed in the last few weeks. There are assistant superintendents that also could kind of step in right now. It's a good question. So, but right now,
maybe that's a different episode. But
yeah, totally. So
it sounds like this new regime came in. The old superintendent bailed.
Yep.
And maybe it was forced out, whatever. You saw the writing on the wall. They had a candidate in mind. She kind of saw the melee that was happening and backed off. As a parent, okay, that sounds like politics and it's funny, but how does that impact our kids?
Well, so that's a good question, because the school is kind of without a leader at this point. And then there's a question of who comes up right now. There are assistant superintendents or potentially principals who could step up. But my understanding is these new players actually want to take more control and more meddling with what's going on. So coming down. Now, the board is supposed to be governance to hire staff, but they want to be and actually delegate responsibility. It's a board function, right? It's supposed to meet every month and kind of build an agenda. So it seems like the goal is to just meddle more in day-to-day activities. Again, with no view as to how this is going to improve anything.
Well, it's probably more fun than meddling less.
I'm sure, particularly got nothing to do all day.
Yeah.
It's kind of one of the challenges right now is parents with kids and jobs and whatever else. It's kind of how much mind space can this actually take? So.
Okay, so what do you want to see? I know you don't have a magic wand to fix all this, but obviously you're passionate about it. You're kind of rallying the troops, so to speak. Where do we go from here?
Yeah, so I mean, I think right now in the short term, there continues to be evidence of improprieties just in terms of process, governance. How do you make notice about what's going to be an agenda? What's the attempt to do here? So in the short term, we just need to be able to react and keep the board in line and make sure they dot their I's and cross their T's and do things by regulation. Longer term, we need to be organized and need to be set up. So the parents need to have a voice in the community. We need to make sure that we represent our children. And it's not just the parents, it's other people in the community that care about the children in the schools and what we're doing. I mean, if you think about the future of the town, we got the past of the town and all the stories that are there. We got this moment in time. But the way a town, without the schools and us willing to make those sacrifices to be here, this town is just going to be full of second homes. In which, circling back to one point on the financing of schools. So the soul of the town, it's not an exaggeration to say it's kind of really at stake. Fast forward 20 years, do you want to have a town that's only active during the summer and holiday weekends, and besides that, it's just abandoned homes, or do you want a vibrant community here? So on the funding and why we do spend very much per student on the funding, and which is, I think, a net good thing. It's part of the reason why we can pay staff and administrators what we can do. and have teachers and staff live in town. But the way that schools are funded in California through property tax, right? Mm-hmm. And so we have property taxes that go to fund schools, first responders, so cops and fire, and then infrastructure, parks, roads, et cetera. And we're what's called a fee basic school. I don't know the exact mechanics of this, but more or less you pay money to California. If you take the money back from Sacramento, you're capped at what you can spend. Mm-hmm. If you don't take the money back, you're uncapped.
Right.
So we're uncapped, which means essentially we're spending what a private school, what we would on a private school out of our property tax. Mm-hmm. Now, part of the argument from part of the community that doesn't have students in the district, their argument is like, my property taxes are paying for this.
Sure.
That's not accurate, because we're in a community that has a lot of second homes and a lot of expensive second homes. They're all paying property tax. They're not using the services. Mm-hmm. And some of them are Prop 13, which means they're locked in their property tax decades ago. Mm-hmm. So what's actually true is all of us of residents are being subsidized by second homeowners. And so that's why.
Thank you, second homeowners. But please continue.
Yeah, thank you. And they don't, they tend not to vote because they don't live here, but they pay all the vote. And so part of the reason why we can have all the infrastructure that we can do and have the nice places and have great schools is because of this. Mm-hmm. So the whole argument that my property taxes are subsidizing and I don't take advantage of is just a lark, just totally inaccurate.
Mm-hmm. So back to the pools. Where were we with those?
Yeah, so the pool has been approved and funding's been secured at the school district. This is important that it's not a city project, it's a school district project. Mm-hmm. And the school district is exempt from local zoning across the state. So the pool project that was approved, which you imagine causes all.
Yeah, I would say that there's no possibility for corruption. Like, your rules don't apply to us.
Well,
please continue.
Consternation in general in a town that's used to shutting down everything, right? By sending an email. So for sure, that's caused consternation, and that's where the sensible Laguna guys have gone. Uh-huh. So where it is, and so the current pool right now is 30-something years old. Mm-hmm. It needs to be replaced, or basic mechanics, it's leaking or whatever else. So the goal initially was to get the pool in the same location. Well, the city's been talking about building a second pool for decades, mm-hmm. right? I know Lane Park, or now I've heard where the old Albertsons was and stuff, whatever it is. But this has been going on forever. Mm-hmm. So we need a new pool. The school district went through a number of iterations, got feedback from the community, et cetera. Where they ended up was a 45-meter pool design that's there. Now, the important thing is the entire new pool sits inside the envelope of the old pool. Same structure, look a little bit different from the mm-hmm. street. We'll have ADA and some other stuff. Clear trade-off and restrooms. So we'll get a 45-meter pool, which allows more people to have swim time, et cetera. Like mm-hmm. right now, my kids have to practice water polo up to 9 o'clock at night just mm-hmm. to schedule the swim time. Mm-hmm. So it'll be more lanes. It won't be what's approved right now. It won't be a 50-meter pool, which is kind of what the other school districts have. Mm-hmm. So it's still a total compromise. There are kind of mechanical things it seems like the new board can do to hold this up, but it is approved and funded from the school. So there is a question at the city, because right now the previous pool, the city and the school district co-funded. Mm-hmm. And right now, I forget exactly, but there's a use agreement between the two of them. The school district, my understanding, in the course of this, approached the city to participate in the financing or do whatever else. Mm-hmm. And we're unable to come to an agreement. The school district wants to have a joint use agreement with the city, et cetera, that's still on the table. The city shut down, or has just stopped negotiations, I would say. Mm-hmm. And I went to a couple of the hearings at the city level, and the feedback from the community was not about how can we go to the good compromise or what have you. It's more like, how do we shut this down? And literally one of the persons can't we give them some money and so we can drag it in front of design review? But anyways, yeah.
So that would be kind of poetic justice to see the school board have to go in front of the design review board and have the bureaucratic process fight it out. But that's just my own dream. But please.
Yeah, well, yeah, there is on that. But and then some of the information that's out there, it is expensive. The proposed plan that has been approved for the approved plan is estimated cost $24 million.
Wow.
A simple retrofit of the pool, kind of leaving everything where it is, but taking bathrooms up to date, and there's some other things you need to do that once you touch it, it's California, right? It's going to program is $21 million. So the delta on this is is small, right? And it's already funded through the school.
Okay.
So it's like a net benefit to the city.
Right.
If you're just look at it in pure economic matters.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I think the big takeaway is if you get involved, it's a pain in the ass because then you have to like do more stuff. So
yeah.
is that what you're saying? Just don't get involved. That's what I'm hearing. Well, I guess zooming out, because people across the globe listen to this podcast by the hundreds of millions.
So Joe Rogan rating,
maybe off by a zero or two. But what is kind of the takeaway for people, not just in Laguna? Like you've done way more than almost anyone. So first off, thank you.
Yeah.
I guess what have you learned, and how can you apply that lesson to parents across the globe?
So I don't know. My personal takeaway on this is that it's easy. I'm sure, like the podcasts that I ride to going to work and back are like I don't know, the end of the U.S. hegemony in the world, and what's the Fed going to do with interest rates, and whatever.
Affect interest rates.
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of where I spent all my time, and particularly last election, which was gonzo for the entertainment value. But it was kind of shocking, and I was disappointed in myself to wake up and for all the mental energy and whatever that I spent on the national election. I live in California. Is my vote even going to matter? Right? So whereas like this one, really mattered, and it was a delta of 200 votes would have made a difference. And so we got 200 people in this text thread already,
right?
So if you think about if I spent a fraction of my mental energy focused here, then that would have could have paid my kids would be in a lot better spot. So think about the immediacy of the whole thing, and it's local politics. So some level the fights are so big because the stakes are so small, kind of thing.
Yeah,
But having to deal with the mental energy on the backside is painful. So it's like anything, it's better to spend an ounce up front than a pound in the back.
Yeah, you don't want a pound in the back.
No, not at all.
It's a family show, at least this episode.
Yeah.
So I guess the kind of takeaway, Newth, is like maybe focus on the local. So I mean, if someone's tuning in Iowa right now or in Australia, it's super easy. And I was guilty of this. You get caught up in the soap opera of things at the national level. Yeah. But especially in California, unless you're kind of with the monoculture, your vote really doesn't matter. But on the local level, and this is I'm completely guilty of this, is I don't really know. My thinking is all right, I want my kids to be safe and I want cost contained, but I don't really spend a lot of time worrying about it. And maybe that's to my detriment, because
Yeah, I mean, if you look, I would expect, and I assume you would expect, that we bounce between fairly narrow guardrails. You get someone who wants to try a bunch of new programs and spend some money, and someone says, whoa, we need to rebid the bus contracts, right? And it just kind of goes back and forth in there. And I guess
well, I really want to make sure there's at least 4 minimum days per week, but that's my own agenda, but please continue.
And actually one of the things in terms of going back to superintendent, the 4 minimum days matters. There is some of this is a legacy of COVID. That we are the #1 school district in California. Test scores are going up and up and to the right. My kids were young during COVID. I mean, they still are young now, but they're in elementary school, not middle school or high school. And so I think there was some kind of lingering frustration that middle school and high school didn't go back as soon as because we in elementary school, we were back in September 2020, right? Yeah. Then, I would either be divorced or living in Florida right now if that had not happened. Yeah. So but I think
thank you, OC School District, or whoever made that happen.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. And actually, even in that context, because you can pod the little kids. You can't do that with kids who are swapping classes.
That's true.
I got it. And then the other thing is, whatever your intentions are here in Orange County, you got to deal with Sacramento. And so, at some point, there's litigation threatened against us for going back to school from the state. Yeah. So you got to deal with all that stuff. And I think so. I didn't get any of the sense of and there was zero. Teachers didn't want to go back to work because they didn't want to work, and so they're going to strike. That happened in other parts.
Happened in LA. Or, I mean, I don't know all the details, but they were locked out for, I think almost a year more than we were.
Yeah, we didn't get any of that. Yeah. And so at some level, I understand, particularly if the rest of the county's going back and the kids are going back and kids in high school, right. There is frustration there that I don't really know about. There's probably some other things that I don't really know, but some of this is lingering after effects of COVID. I don't think there would have been as many just dissatisfied parents that these kind of malign actors could have tapped into.
Okay. Yeah. So it shows history isn't a static event.
Yeah.
It lingers. And I'm not the only petty one out there, so that makes me kind of feel
Totally.
good. Well, so first of all, thank you for kind of summarizing it. What do you recommend, I guess, on the local level? What can people do? Like, you're helping put the word out. Like, now what?
Yeah, so I think right now that it's important that everybody gets informed. To the extent, initially you need people to show up to school board meetings as possible. Now, there's a lot of energy to do that in the short term, but we need to make sure that that stays up over the medium to long term.
Can they make them less boring? Because I'll go more if it's
a little bit less boring.
Yeah,
so we can point out where the fireworks might happen.
Okay.
You can show, have popcorn at the door.
Yeah.
That and even if it's not even showing up in person, just kind of being a little bit more aware of what's at stake. So there are we're putting together a group now. We're putting some stuff out there that it kind of will provide more context as to why some of these things matter. And we'll do mailing lists and all those other kinds of things. So I think just that element of being a little bit more informed. And we've got the next election is in 2 years, and there's 3 seats that are up, 2 we've got to defend and 1 to take back. So we really need to start looking for that. Really prepared to come on strong in 2026 and make sure that we lay the groundwork so this can't happen, then and thereafter.
Gotcha. Well, we'll put links to resources. Well, thank you. As an uninformed person, I'm glad I know at least one informed person in my life. And I guess I ask this at the end of every episode. What are you optimistic about? And let's try to focus it on kind of the topic at hand. Like what's good what good can come out of all this?
I think we're going to come. I think this is kind of like I think as we come out organized as parents and a community that supports our schools, that organization is going to stick. And if our kids are a special interest in the schools, which is just insane, then we'll be able to represent that special interest. So I'm very optimistic about that. And the more they've gotten into the schools, I have to say, like people like you and I, guys like you and I, kind of just take all this for granted. As I've gotten to know and interact with some of the people that have really been involved, parents and other former board members, like, wow, I have a lot of appreciation for the time that they spend on this and the passion that they take to their job. And I probably don't agree with a number of their ideas, but the bulk of it, go to school, we say the Pledge of Allegiance, we do Christmas and Hanukkah songs and everything else, all those kinds of things you worry about. We don't have any of that here. We have great theater and whatever else. And so net, we have essentially a private school experience and an amazing community and what have you. So I come away with more pride and optimism than when I went into this, but we got to fight. And there's people that don't have our kids' best interest at heart, fundamentally, and for very selfish, NIMBY-ish reasons or petty grievance reasons, which is just it's just insane, right? Like we're not arguing about anything like substantive, like you're just batting flies around your head. Well,
I'm glad to know that, some of the high school stuff might continue as we're older, but there are people like you and other hard workers out there who are making us a little more mature. And one day I'll catch up with all you guys. So
yeah.
Well, as a parent and as a resident, thank you for doing what you do. And I guess the big takeaway is, don't be like me and just complain about things. Be more like Newth and learn about stuff and take action and rally the community. So appreciate it.
But actually, one parting thought. So Matt is doing his part in getting the word out. And I would suggest that some of these other topics you have follow on, because the pool, like I said, Julian Harvey grew up in town. He was on the national water polo team, former chief of police of Huntington Beach and Anaheim. And he testified, or cop or whatever else. But he spoke the last time they went to do the pool 32 years ago.
Wow.
So he'd be a great one to go through all the history and the benefits and the trade-offs that we made. On the superintendent question, there's people that are way more qualified for me that are in there in terms of what the next search will look like. Why do we need them? What are the trade-offs in that? Even day-to-day functioning about what's tapping through the bureaucraties that shows up in the agendas, what this actually means and how it affects the kids. I mean, cool to have some follow-ons with some of those people that can really take you down some of those paths.
Let's do it. All right. You know how to reach me. Follow on, people.
All right. Thank you, guys. There you go. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Matt Balaker podcast. To learn more, please check out mattbalaker.com and encourage your friends to like, subscribe, and share. Really appreciate it.